Hi, team. How are you? Text me if you need to. If I miss anything. Have we opened the meeting yet or? Yeah, okay. So I can't talk about my hair being puffy from the face mask or anything?
That's okay, mine's all frizzy.
From the face mask, right? I put the face mask on and all this hot air flows out.
I can't do a thing with my hair. It's just
You have COVID hair at this point.
I'm going to occasionally show Suzanne.
Is she in the suit? Oh no, she's exercising.
When she should be planning, Trish. I'm going to tell the parents this is the laziness I get from.
just a reminder, everybody, we are live on YouTube.
Got it. Okay, that's fine. Hi, we're live on YouTube and we're showing off our beautiful staff member who's showing us what a balanced lifestyle looks like. We appreciate that. It's called self-care in hard times.
Hear, hear.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and jump in because I'm looking at my cell phone here and it's 4:30 and time for us to jump into our town hall. And so welcome everybody. I see a lot of smiling faces out there today, which makes me happy. It's been a long haul, and since the last time we had a town hall, we've had fires and we've started distance learning and we've had all kinds of new guidance from the state. And so we're just never bored lately. So exciting times. We're glad that you're here with us. We have a short PowerPoint here just to go through some things quickly to bring people up to speed as to where we are right now. And then we're going to open it up to questions and comments and all that good stuff. Really, the purpose of our town halls is to keep the communication lines open so that we can hear from you. And so I don't want to do a tremendous amount of talking, but I do sort of want to front load us as to where we are at this moment in time. And so The slide that you see presented right now is a list of the people who are from the district who are on this particular town hall meeting. And so there are people with different focuses in our district, different expertise that they can share. And so if you have a particular question for someone, you're allowed to do that as well. So next slide. Again, we have ground rules for our town hall, and so that we can keep things very positive and upbeat, we want to make sure that we're able to hear from you in a positive fashion so that we can really actually hear what your concern or ideas might be. And so we're asking that you assume best intentions. We all show mutual respect. We have 1 minute for your statement or question per participant. And any inappropriate or disparaging comments will result in someone being muted. So we're gonna stay focused on the positive ground rules tonight. Next slide. So with that, I would just like to say what is consistent right now, and absolutely nothing. Nothing is consistent, and it is really the most frustrating of times. And I'm sure that if you are a parent or a community member or a student, you're a faculty member, a classified person in our district, you're experiencing the same thing with us. This COVID climate tends to be very rocky. The information seems to come through consistently changing. It could be daily, weekly, what have you, but it is never sort of solid, and we can't really just base all of our decisions on one thing. So we call it fluid, and the fluidity can be frustrating. Hold on 1 second. My husband is in the office with me right now. He's a teacher at Monterey High School, and apparently he has PK on his phone, and so I apologize for the back noise there. I'm competing with the Monterey superintendent. Thanks, ma'am. Next slide. So what stands right now for us as we look at our campuses in distance learning? Most students obviously are in a distance learning mode, and we have staff coming into the buildings or staying home at this point in time, teachers, depending on their particular personal situation. And we are serving 2 small cohorts at this point in time on all of our campuses. The current small cohorts that we are servicing are childcare for our teachers and our staff, and then students with no internet service. We are currently going to expand that, and we're looking to expand it. And we will be adding our targeted support services, which include some students with special needs such as IEPs, English learners, homeless youth, and foster youth. And so the state probably 2 or 3 weeks ago gave us actual written direction and guidance regarding the cohorts. We're trying to keep the cohorts as small as we can on our campuses, and our classified people are actually supervising those cohorts for us. And so, like I said, they're on every campus, and we have quite a few kids on campuses. And really the way that I think of this is that we are slowly rolling out to get to where we want to be, which is everybody's back in school eventually, right? But for the moment, what we have are these small cohorts. And so those cohorts are, kept to about 14 students or less with 1 or 2 adults. We are having those students masked. We are having them 6 feet apart. We're following all of those guidelines that we have been given by the California Department of Public Health, and the actual guidelines that we've agreed to for our teachers and our staff when we come back in a hybrid sort of model. So again, we are again sort of slowly rolling in kids and increasing the amount of students we have on our campuses as we can. I would add to that our preschool was the first to open. So Carmel came back into the building first because per state guidelines, that age group could come back in before they gave any direction for TK through 12. So again, working on increasing and adding cohorts as we go. Next slide. Most of you have probably heard that there is the opportunity for an elementary waiver as well. Last week, when I sent out my written communication, we included a flyer from MCOE, Monterey County Office of Education, and that outlined 3 different ways that I'm talking about tonight. And the elementary waiver just opened up last Tuesday for people to actually have consideration by the county health department. So the way that works is that every Tuesday at noon, they look at the numbers, and if our county numbers, there's this 14, if we're under this 14 number, then the county office, the Dr. Moreno's office, the health department, will actually look at those particular waivers that have been submitted and decide whether or not he's going to sign off on that. And he looks at a lot of different metrics and numbers on his end of things, makes a decision, and if he signs off, then he sends that off to the state Department of Health. So we will find out tomorrow at noon whether or not we're still under the 14 for this particular week cycle. But I would like to say that the way that I'm describing the waiver application process is that it is just that, it's a process. So it isn't just me simply signing off a piece of paper and mailing it off to Dr. Moreno. I have to actually go through several steps that get us to the point where we will be considered. And that is something that we are currently looking at doing. Those steps, as you can see, I have to consult with both of our unions. Meet and consult is what they call it, and talk about any issues that they might see that are under their purview. And that is typically going to be, we're talking about the safety issues, just like we discussed in our MOUs. Our MOUs are consistent with the California Department of Public Health and those guidelines. And so there isn't anything surprising about them. You can find them on the website. We also have to receive input from parents and the community as well. And so we are currently putting together a document that will be mailed out or sent out to all of our families so that we can hear from all the parents at this point in time. So while we have surveyed in the past several months, and we have all kinds of surveys that say, you know, certain people will be coming back in a hybrid, and some people, you know, want to keep their children at home for distance learning. Right now, we are going to be asking families to commit to a decision. And so we know that when you're surveyed, you have a little bit of wiggle room, you know, maybe I'll say this or that, I'm not quite sure, and it's going to kind of depend on this. We're actually going to be asking families to put down a choice at this point in time. We have to have that so that we can build our classes and what they will look like. We have all kinds of different things in, you know, conceptually that we've been talking about. And so now the rubber meets the road, not only with parents and families to make those decisions, but also for teachers as well. And so when we get to the point when we come back into the building, we know how many teachers will be back in the building, and we'll know how many students are coming back. You know, I hear from a lot of you all the time, and it's interesting. I think I hear more, or I was hearing more from the families that really wanted their students back in school. And, you know, they were very, you know, my kids need to be back. This is unhealthy. And we hear all those issues that are going on. But now I'm hearing from the other group, right? Because people are hearing, oh my gosh, they might open and they might be getting a waiver, and what are we going to do? And so there's no one answer, right? Every family is going to have different concerns for their children. And so fortunately, we're going to be able to provide those choices, right? We're going to be able to open up in a hybrid and also let people continue in a distance learning model. What that distance learning model looks like exactly will depend on the students that make those choices not to come back in, as well as the staffing that we have. So it's like a puzzle. It's complex. It's something that we can do, but it's going to take a bit of time. So in the next couple of weeks, teachers and parents will be making those hard decisions about whether or not they're coming back into the building, and then we can move from there. And then, of course, we also have to have certain health and safety issues dealt with that we have to document in this waiver process. And so I felt really actually comfortable with most of them. I have all my documents here that I've been reading the last few days. But I have to say there is one that concerns me, and that is the testing portion. Apparently, as a school district, we have to ensure that we have rapid testing available for students and for staff. And so that one concerns me just by virtue of the fact that we know that our county doesn't necessarily have the capacity to the levels that we might need in that. So it is something that we're going to have to look at closely and have more communication with the health department, or possibly, you know, the local testing labs and how they might be providing hundreds of tests weekly for us. So that's going to be a challenge. It's not something we typically deal with, obviously. Actually, none of this is, but I mean, that's part of the fun here. Next slide. That's all I have to say on the topics. And I'm going to open it up to all of you. And again, there's a lot of us on the call, so we're going to open it up and have you comment and ask questions.
Okay, so first up is going to be Jill Lewis. Jill, I'm going to allow you to talk. Go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hi, yeah, this is Jill Lewis. Thanks for taking my call. I was wondering when we can apply for the waiver, since we can apply for a waiver right now, if you've already started the process. I know that you said it's quite a process, and I'm just wondering if you've already started filling out the paperwork for that. And yeah, the survey, I've been asking since June to have that exact survey to find out, because I know, like, even I 3 months ago was concerned about going back to school, and now I might say yes, because I've seen that, you know, you've successfully had the teachers' kids at school, and you successfully, YMCA has had kids all together, and All Saints is open. And there's just all these great examples of schools and institutions like the Carmel Dance Center that have been open for weeks or months with these groups of 14 or less children, and they're following California safety guidelines, and there's just no COVID outbreaks. So I think that's great news. But I would never want to start school if it's not done safely. And I think that now we have proof that it can be done safely. So I was just wondering if you have started the waiver, and if you're going to start in the next week, or exactly when you're going to start. And I'm just really glad that you're going to put that survey out, because I think that, you know, it would have been great a month ago, even if we had put the survey out, because I bet there's like 30% of parents that still don't feel safe coming back. And I'm so happy that they'll still have a distance learning option, because I think that's really important, because we don't know who has
Just to
older
let you
people
know,
at
your
home
1
that
minute
sort of
is
thing.
up. I'm
Oh,
sorry.
sorry. I thought it was
It's
3
okay.
minutes. You went back to 1 minute. Sorry about that.
It's not a board meeting, it's a town hall. Sorry.
Okay. No, that's okay. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you, Jill. So two areas of I think two questions there. Have I started the waiver process? I have started, yes, as far as looking at the waiver and reading through all the options. I've already reached out to my 2 union presidents to get something to talk, get some time set up to consult with them. We are going to be talking to the board next week about next steps and how they want to go forward at the September 30th meeting. So yes, we're looking at that. We're looking at it, and very, and I think there are groups of people who are very excited about that opportunity. So I totally hear you. And then secondly, it went out of my head what the second part of that question was. Can someone help me?
So it was just the survey is what she was asking
Oh, that's
about,
right.
and if you had applied for the waiver.
Got it. And I would say it's not a survey anymore. The surveys have gone out for the last 6 months. We've done surveys. Now it's not a survey. Now it's a decision. The line is in the sand. You're making a decision. You're not being surveyed anymore. You're going to make a decision. So that's going to be probably easier for some people than others. It sounds like some families will say, yep, I'm coming back, no problem. But I don't know that it's going to be as easy as we think, but it's not a survey anymore. We're getting real. Okay, next question.
Sure. Stacy Perfetta, I'm going to allow you to talk. You can unmute yourself.
Thank you. Thank you for taking my call. I don't really know what the answer to this question is. I have a child in middle school, and I have a child in who's a freshman at Carmel High. And the way that the day is split up, she has an AP class, an elective, and then PE. And then on Tuesdays and Thursdays, she has 3 honors classes and then her elective foreign language. And she's a smart girl. She gets great grades. She's a good student, but I'm sure she's not the only one that's struggling. She's probably crying 4 times a day. She's really having a hard time with just being on Zoom from 8:30 in the morning till 3:30 in the afternoon. And it's, affecting her health mentally. And so I hear about you bringing groups back in by if they have a 504 or an IEP, or if they're, English language learners, that sort of thing. What about the kids that just are really struggling with being on Zoom for 7 hours a day? With how do I'm
DC,
sure she's not the only one.
you might want to wrap
Sorry.
up. Sorry, your 1 minute is up.
Okay, so how do I help her? How do these kids? What do I do for her, or these kids that are like her, that are just struggling this way?
Thank you, Stacy. I'm going to have John Lyons reach out to you personally. I think because you've given such information about your daughter that is specific to her needs, I want her to be able to get the support that she needs. So I'm going to have John reach out, and the high school staff reach out for that particular situation. And I would just say that the cohorts are not put together for that, unfortunately. The cohorts are very specific, and they've been laid out by the state about which students should be included in them. But again, we are looking at this waiver, and we're also hopeful that the numbers are going to go down. There is, the hope of us being from purple to red, so that's going to give us that other option of opening in lots of schools. When it goes purple to red, I would anticipate a lot of schools coming back into the hybrid model at that point in time. But Stacy, I'm sorry, because it's just such a difficult time for everybody right now. I know staff and everybody's just really struggling all over the place, right? Okay, next question.
So I'm going to let Krista Ostoich in. And Krista, go ahead and unmute and ask your question.
Hello, I have 2 quick questions. First is in regards to the comment you made, Trish, about the requirement for rapid testing. I'd just like to know who is making that requirement. I haven't heard of it before. You and I had discussed this about a week ago, and I just want to know, I feel like there's been a lot of misinformation. I'm not saying it's on your part, Trish, but I just want to fully understand what the requirements are, because I know other districts in the state have opened without rapid testing. And second, I just don't understand why we have our campuses closed all day long. Specifically, Carmel Middle School, it's a huge campus. After lunch and after the academic periods are finished, why can't we open the track, the lower field, some of those side areas to our students who are being forced to sit in front of Zoom all day? They need to go out and exercise. And waiting till 4 o'clock every day is just a little bit too late. It would be nice if you could move that up to 12, 1, 2, something a little bit more reasonable, so that our kids can use the campuses for just a short period of the day to get some physical. Yeah.
Thank you, Krista. That's something for us to consider for sure. We can look at possibly opening up a little bit earlier. I will take that concern to our administrative council and have more conversation around it. And I would say that the bullet on the testing is on the waiver application cover form that I'm reading through. And this is a sample. So obviously going through all the stuff I can right now. It's one of the issues that I've highlighted that might be concerning as we go through. Not insurmountable, but challenging. Next person.
So I'm going to let Shelley Ritterall in. Shelley, you can unmute yourself.
Hi, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. This wasn't what I was going to have my question on, but I just actually wanted to ditto what the previous speaker just said, that I hope you can consider opening these campuses earlier than 4 or 4:30 in the afternoon. I have kids that are doing PE, independent PE. There's nowhere else they can run for that long. That's not a track. And it's ridiculous that he can't be welcomed on the CMS track when it's so far away from the buildings and there's no interaction with anyone else. But anyway, next topic. If you could please address the waiver again. You said that you need the union president's okay. I don't understand at this point what they're okaying. If I understand it correctly, the MOU guidelines were made with them, and if the MOU is done, if all the requirements are done, what are the union presidents okaying at that point? And also regarding the waiver, I also don't understand how you said the Monterey County Health Department can only approve a waiver when we've been 14 days average cases drop below 200. So I don't understand why the private schools or some other schools in our district have open, because don't they have that same guideline? And wouldn't they have
Your
this
1 minute is up, Shelley.
Thank you,
might wanna just
Shelley.
wrap it up, sorry.
I'm going to go ahead and address the two questions that I heard. The union presidents, it is not, I don't need to get their okay. What it's called is consulting. And so I consult with them, I meet with them and I say, this is our plan. We're going to open in hybrid and this is what we're planning to do. And then they say, okay, gosh, what safety things do you have going? What, take us through the MOU points and how have you addressed this? And can we talk to Dan Paul, who's the expert on that in our district? So consulting is more coming together and problem solving at that particular time with the union. You're correct. We already have a lot of that sort of drafted out. So the consulting piece is put in, it's actually in the waiver process, but it's not an okay. So they don't have to say yes or no. As for the private schools in the area, All Saints at least, I called the principal last week and they are open with the cohorting model right now. So they are small enough, they brought back their first and second grades with the cohorts, the 14 or under, actually I think they're doing 8 to 10 students, he said. And then they opened up third and fourth, I believe. So they don't have a waiver. They might by now, I don't know. This was as of last week, they didn't have a waiver. Again, they were cohorting. So it's confusing, I realize. There's a lot of different components going on around right now. Next question.
Wally Galloway, please unmute yourself and ask your question.
Yeah, so two things, comment on the question. So first of all, based on sort of all the numbers coming out of our county, it seems like in our area, our sort of smaller area here, I'd love to see a waiver applied for the high school, because I think that we're well below the state, we're well on the good side of the state requirement to open if we weren't affected by other areas in the county, number one. Number two, are we at a competitive disadvantage with our teachers union contracts? Is there a scenario where other districts in the peninsula would open before we are able to because of the contracts we have with our teachers union?
Great question. So, and I don't know that I included it on my slide. The waiver only allows us to apply for TK through 6th grade. So we would most likely be asking for TK or K through 5th grade, just because that's the natural cutoff in our elementary schools. The 6th graders go on to middle. So high school waivers are not an option at this particular point in time. Again, it's changing every day, who knows? But for the moment, high school is not included in the waiver process. As for our union contracts, no, I don't see our contracts being any, more, stringent than others in the peninsula. Certainly, when I was in a meeting last week, I was talking about possibly, looking at the waiver and going through that process, and other people weren't necessarily there yet. So, it depends on the community, right? You've pointed out the fact that people talk a lot about, the low incidence in this part of the peninsula. And I think that it would be interesting if we were to apply for a waiver, if that would be a consideration, if the state would say, well, yes, the incidents are low in Carmel in that immediate area, so we're going to go ahead and give it to them. I don't know that. It's going to be interesting to, to see what might happen. But yes, I know that's a common sort of article or comment locally. That might change when you start bringing people in from other areas to do what we want to do, but we'll see. Next question.
Ashley Matish McCoy. Please unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hi, thank you. My daughter is a first grader at Carmel River, and I just wanted to ask 2 questions. The first is quick. Do you have a timeline on when you're going to be sending out that not survey, but decision that you'd like us to make? And sorry, I'm holding a baby and hopping up and down. And are you, I'm not sure if this is just applicable to Carmel River, but there was a survey sent out in July about our preferences in terms of length of time on Zoom for our kids. And the results of the survey showed that almost all the elementary school aged parents preferred 3 hours or less of Zoom time. And I'm wondering, if we continue in this distance learning mode, are you going to implement our preferences? Because the woman who talked about her crying is not the only one. I see it all the time in my child's classroom. There's kids crying constantly. So thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so length of time on Zoom. Does anyone want to speak to that out there?
Yes, I'll speak to it.
Okay.
This is Jay Martin, principal at Rivers School. Hi, Ashley. First off, if your child is experiencing a lot of anxiety or exhaustion or otherwise, I certainly would invite you to contact the teacher, and maybe you already have. There's other resources as well, such as the school counselor who might be of assistance, but we definitely want to work with you to ensure that your child is not feeling overloaded. Weekly, I'm addressing that individually with families and trying to make modifications or provide supports to assist people such as yourself. But secondly, what's interesting about the survey is I too, on at least a couple of occasions, actually misread the results of that survey. It didn't speak to the number of hours. It actually spoke to the number of sessions. So what happened is the number of sessions that were preferable by parents numbered around 3-ish, I should say, as being the most appropriate number of Zoom sessions, not hours again, during a school day. And as an aside, I would certainly agree that anything near 3 hours of Zooming for a first grader to me would be excessive. So I would have to dig a little deeper to understand exactly what is occurring, excuse me, in these in the classroom or the grade level. But again, we are sensitive to the number of hours that kids are participating. So again, I'll invite you to reach out to the teacher, the counselor, or even myself to assist you.
And really, I mean, that's one of the probably the largest dilemmas in this whole thing, right? I mean, my kids are older now, but we were always arguing against screen time. And in a normal climate and environment, we would be arguing against screen time for primary grades like that. I used to teach first grade. It's appalling, but here we are, and that's the reality of our situation. And it's not good in that particular piece of the realm. And so I feel for everybody in that situation for sure. Next question. Thanks, Jay.
Kristen DeMaria, please unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hi, thank you. I was wondering, with the elementary waiver, what's the best case scenario for a timeline for this, for when the kids could potentially be back in school in person? Are we looking at 30 days, 60 after the first of the year? Any idea on timeline would be helpful. Thank you.
You know what? That is an excellent question. And this group of people that are on the call right now, that's sort of our next question for us. We go through these particular steps, which would be, I would be meeting with our 2 unions, putting out this decision-making point in time for parents and teachers. And then, you know, how much time beyond that, you put your waiver in, and then if they say yes, how much do we need, like how many weeks do we need to actually get everybody back into the building? We're sort of trying to backward map that question right now, and we're not quite there yet. I hope to have a little bit more to speak to that timeline for the September 30th board meeting. But that's, you know, we've been grappling with that, you know, distance learning and the fires, we got all these different pieces, and now we're 4 weeks in, and it's like, okay, now let's go to this next step, which we did a tremendous amount of planning back in June and July. But as we're looking at those plans right now, we are realizing they, you know, in just a few months down the line, how much has shifted again. So, you know, anyway, that being said, we're looking at all those plans over again. But I think that we all realize, you know, there are parents out there who are emailing me saying, what are you doing? You're going to change now? My kid loves what's going on. They're distance learning right now, and they love their friends, and they're having this great experience, and now you're going to change it again? And I'm saying, well, you don't have to come back in the building. So, you know, again, no one's going to be just definitely happy no matter which way we go in this situation. But we do know, I guess I would say, bottom line, safety is paramount. And so we have to make sure that we have all the safety components and feel really good about what we're doing as we move people around the buildings. Thank you. Next question.
So Stephanie Ham, please unmute yourself and ask your question.
Yes, thank you for this opportunity just to come forth with questions. So my question, I have actually two parts of it. One is when we talk about these cohorts that we're going to form for IEP kids or kids, English language learners and so forth, what is that going to look like? Is it going to essentially be an extension of what's currently happening? Are the kids going to be, you know, on the computer, or is this going to be a group of kindergarten kids, first grade kids, you know, one per site, one per district? How's that going to look? Is it going to be a teacher in there, an aide? Are they going to be able to do in-person speech, in-person, you know, OT? Will they bring the one-to-ones back? I'm just curious. And then the other question I have is the cohort guidance that came from the state came out like a month ago. And so we could be working on that, but obviously there's so many things changing and so many things to make that happen, just like the same thing with the waiver. Is there any way we can change communication to say, we're working on this, we're, you know, 80% of the way, we have an estimated timeline of starting at this date, these are the kids we're looking at having join these cohorts? Just more information and communication to the families, I think would just put our minds at ease so that we're not constantly guessing.
Stephanie,
Thank you.
sorry, you're 1 minute up, thanks.
So I would say with the cohorts and bringing the special populations onto the campuses will look different depending on the situation. Those, again, are students with special needs. And so many times there might be a small group setting, there might be a one-on-one setting, there might be a specialist working with that child, they might be on a Zoom call. I don't think that there's a one-size-fits-all in a special needs student setting, which is why it's taken us a little bit longer to get up to speed. I would say that there are schools around in our area that haven't tried cohorts at all yet because, you know, they're not there yet. So the fact that we have, you know, 2 sets of cohorts and we're going to be opening up more here fairly soon, I feel good about it. I feel like we're moving at the speed that is working so that we can make sure that we're doing what we need to do. And I think that's what makes it difficult for me to give you definite timelines for every thing that we're doing. It's tough to give a definite timeline on. I mean, right now it would be impossible to give a timeline for a waiver just because there's so many steps to it that I don't have control over. So one size does not fit all on the cohorts for that. And thank you. I'm glad you're on tonight, and this is part of the communication. So thank you for giving me that feedback. I appreciate that. Next question.
So I'm going to let Carrie Clausen in. Carrie, if you'll unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hi, Hi. I just wanted to start with giving a positive shout out to all our teachers who've made the impossible possible, and especially our Carmelo staff who has taken on the kids first, and that's a big shout out to them. But I also wanted to just encourage the board and you, Trisha, to sit in on some of these classes, especially the lower elementary school grades. It's really stressful for these kids. It's a long day, and I know that some other school districts are doing it differently where they're not on Zoom the whole time. And I feel like if you guys were to see this and see how many children end in tears during the day, maybe some changes can be made, because if we're stuck on a computer, there's going to need to be some changes for these poor babies.
Thank you, Carrie. That is devastating to hear. I don't want anyone out there crying on a Zoom call. And I would say that it is a work in progress. And so we're taking that information in, and I know that the principals on this call right now are talking to their staff and their teachers and getting feedback from people. So we will stay on top of that for sure. Yeah, it's not the best environment for our primary school children at all.
So I just want to let those that have re-raised their hand to speak again know that I'm getting through everyone that hasn't had a chance to speak first, and then we can entertain whether Trisha's going to open it back up to ask other questions than your time. Okay. So Tamara Michi, I wanted to let you know you can unmute yourself and go ahead and ask your question.
Hi, thank you for taking my question. My question was with regards to the waiver. Trisha had mentioned that when we start to return our students, that we would be returning on a hybrid model. But from what I understand from the others who have returned, that they are on a full-time schedule, just in smaller cohorts. So just wanted to make sure that when our students do begin to return, are we looking at a regular model like the other schools in our district, or if she just misspoke? Thank you.
So I think what you're saying, is like a school like All Saints is coming back and everyone's coming back. And what I would say is that they have a much smaller enrollment than we do. And so they might be able to do the different, the social distancing, the 6 feet, spreading children out in the small cohorts and those types of things with all of their population. That might be something we could do, say, at Cooper, because we don't have as many students there. And so we might be able to bring all Cooper students back because they're smaller and follow the guidelines. But they're going to look the same as our other schools as far as following the guidelines. If we can't fit, 25 students in a classroom with the social distancing and the guidelines that we have, then we have to bring back half of those students. So basically, it's just how many students can we bring into a building while following the guidelines. Next question.
So I'm going to allow Jose to speak. Jose, please unmute yourself and ask your question.
Yes, my question was for the Cooper, but the principal, she already answered my question about it's gonna be returning early to class because this is small. They got really small classes.
Yes, and Lisa, I don't know if you want to pipe in there at all, but.
When we were looking at returning a couple weeks before school started, we were looking at a model where we do have to probably modify the day because we can only put 14 students or 14 seats on a bus. So we may have to run a few bus runs. So we might have to stagger the starts and the end times for students, but we feel like we can divide the students into small groups and have them there every day when we return.
Which is delightful.
Okay, gonna go to Stacy Sherling. Stacy, go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hi, I didn't really have a question so much. I just wanted to give a compliment. I know that there's no right answer with the Zoom thing, but I just wanted to say that we love it, and I think the teachers are doing such a good job in doing their absolute best with Zoom. And my son would hands down rather be on Zoom all day and see his friends and see his teacher than having me talk to him all day. So I just wanted to give a compliment that while I know the Zoom is hard and it's frustrating, I think everyone's doing the best that they can. And my son loves looking at Mrs. Weaver all day. So thank you. That's it.
Stacy, and thank you for giving Mrs. Weaver a shout out and all of our teachers a shout out. They love your children and they're doing the best they can right now too. And so that's really nice of you. Thank you. We appreciate that. Next question.
Okay, so it looks like I have 3 that have already asked questions that have their hand raised again. So we'll go through those. I think there's enough time, right, to go ahead and entertain those 3?
Yep.
Actually, now 4. So Jill Lewis, go ahead and unmute yourself and please ask your question. And I am timing to 1 just so everyone knows. Thank you.
Hi, yeah, thank you. Yeah, I have one kid that's crying so much that I had to pull him out, my 4th grader, and he's really sad to not be in River. And I've had 3 kids in River in 11 grades I've gone through with 3 kids in the past several years. And so it's kind of heartbreaking to have to take him out, but since he just can't do it, I have no choice. But I've had a wonderful experience in 2nd with my 2nd grader. I don't know if I think it's partly his attitude, but his teacher Robinson has been just incredible. And I know it's super frustrating and a lot of work for her, but she's been wonderful. I just wanted to ask if we will actually start the waiver process, like when it will start, because All Saints already put their application in, and so did several elementary schools in Salinas. And also, most importantly, as soon as we get into tier 2, the red, are you starting school in person for all the grades, since we legally can? And Monterey County said that we can if we are in tier 2 for all grades and we don't need to consult with them. And also, I also really would love to see the option of school full days.
Yeah, I think you made a really good point, Jill, that all children are different. And I think as educators, we are in classrooms with them and we differentiate our instruction accordingly. And we know that different children respond to different ways of learning. And so I think what you're seeing some of that right now in the same family, right? Your 4th grader may struggle with it and it isn't working for them, but then you have another child in the home that it works for. So I think that's what I'm hearing, not only within, differences with the different families, but also within those families. There's some children thriving in this environment. It's hard to believe, but I think I could probably, looking at my 2 children, I would have one that would thrive and the other one would want to be at school. So thank you for pointing that particular piece out, but it's working for some and it's not working for others, just like when we are in a classroom. That doesn't always work for some children either. As far as the waiver, starting the waiver, like I said, I am looking through everything. I've talked to my union people, getting dates on the calendar for that, obviously doing safety things. We will be talking to the board on September 30th to have that conversation more in depth for obvious reasons. All Saints, my understanding is that All Saints put their waiver in before there was even a waiver piece of paper. So they put theirs in way, way back, and it's been sitting on Moreno's desk until this last week. So it'll be interesting to see whether or not Moreno signed it. I would imagine he probably did, but I haven't heard that yet. So again, the reason that All Saints is open is because they're doing cohorting. And until I hear they got a waiver, we'll wait and see. I would imagine that if Moreno did sign the waiver this last week, that it's at the state level at this point in time. And so we'll see whether or not it goes through that process. And purple to red, Purple to red is a whole other piece of this, but again, we're moving towards preparing for red, and you know, the waiver and the red sort of are similar in my mind. Full days, we would be doing full days. It would just probably be a hybrid in which half of the students would be in depending on the day. And again, that's because of the size. Cooper wouldn't necessarily be in that. And I don't know if anybody else wants to jump in on that. I don't know if I hit all the answers or not.
I'll jump in just for a second. So I believe in the red, we would still have to follow all of the California Department of Public Health and California Department of Education guidelines. So we would have to have 6-foot social distancing, so on and so on. And that would, for us, we know that that would put us in a, at best, a hybrid model with, you know, alternating groups on different days. We would not have the ability in red to bring everybody back on the same day kind of school. So
I'd like to jump in as well. I'm an individual who is on that end of the spectrum that isn't necessarily as concerned as some folks are about a return. It's a very personal decision. However, to pivot real quickly, I just want the audience to know, is an exceptionally challenging task. The teachers have worked exceptionally hard, as has the administration, to put together a program of integrity. Now, when we pivot and have to come up with an altogether different model, we want to ensure that it's exceptionally high quality. And that's going to take some time. I mean, if we weren't concerned about quality, we could pivot quickly and do this imprudently. So we really want to ensure that when we do pivot, that our children are entering not only a safe environment, but a high quality learning environment that I feel that our demographic has always tasked us with accomplishing. And we look forward to that task again, but we don't want to move things too quickly where we sacrifice that goal. And I really feel that that's something that all of us, as anxious as we are, I'm one of them who's anxious, needs to keep in mind.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Yes, and I'm going to go to the people that have not spoken so that we can get them in on the timeline that we have. So I'm going to go with Ryan Sullivan. Please unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hi, thanks for taking the time to answer these questions. Real quick, I missed the first part of the meeting here. I was about 10, 15 minutes late, so I don't know if you've talked about this, but I know in the past you had talked about not being able to have classes outside due to state regulations. As a way around that, you know, I have a kindergartner and a first grader at Tularcitos. I don't think they're gonna give approvals for the high school anytime soon, from what I can see, unfortunately. But if they do allow it for the elementary schools, have you considered sending some of the elementary kids to the high school and the middle school? If those campuses aren't approved yet, that you could space out and you could go full time with the smaller cohorts. Thank you for your time. Thanks.
That's a good suggestion, actually. Yeah, I don't know that we got that into that piece of the waiver as far as moving students around the district and moving staffing and transportation, but it's a good suggestion that I can bring to the group. Anyone else want to speak to it or no? Okay, next question.
Paul Rasmussen, if you'll go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question.
Yes, thank you. Just a real easy question, I hope. But just first of all, I'd like to just kind of echo some comments about the goodness that's happening. I have 2 middle schoolers and 2 high schoolers, and I've seen so much innovation on the faculty's parts, from the music teachers, the choir teachers, the language teachers. Mr. Schreier is always amazing, and it's just great. But my question, as the short order cook of the family, is how can we improve lunch? Lunch seems to always be so hard. And the biggest complaint I get from my 4 kids is they never have time for lunch. Over.
That's a good one. Anyone want to speak to lunch or food right now? I'm not seeing what's out there and what's being shared or picked up or.
Yeah, I heard two things about his comment, which was there's not enough time for lunch. And I'm not sure if that's what he's talking about or if that's his concern, or is it the food?
And they're not piped back in, Yvonne, so.
Yeah, that is it. So I'll just speak really quick. We are definitely talking about food, meal service for students. How do we handle meal service for students that would be on campus and also provide meals to families that need it on the days that they're not on campus? We have lots of options that we're considering and ways that we can do that. And food, you know, we have a real interest in providing good, nutritious meals. We have a requirement from the federal government that we meet USDA guidelines for the breakfast and lunch program that we do follow. So it's a constant conversation that's being talked about. We plan to meet with the principals individually just to make sure that we can support what they're doing on their campus. And one of those things will be schedules, making sure that we understand when meals are going to be served and how long the meals are going to be allowed to be served. And so there's still some of those logistics that we're working out.
Yeah, and thank you, Yvonne. I think Paul was talking about time. So, you know, I think that's where he was at. Yeah, time is the issue. He just put that in there. I believe that's what he was talking about as well.
Okay. All right.
So that's, yeah.
Okay, so everyone here, the time might be an issue, scheduling. Okay, next person.
Okay.
Thank you, Paul.
Nicole Kelly, please unmute yourself and ask your question.
Thank you, Tricia. Thank you, everyone. My question is, God forbid we cannot go back to school after January in a hybrid model. If that is not possible, has any consideration been given to the possibility of bringing seniors back only? I know there's 230 students, but I'm wondering if that would be, if that's been considered at all. It just feels like a rite of passage, an American rite of passage. It's one of the few rite of passages we have. And it would just break my heart for my senior to miss that. I have a sophomore, she's doing just fine. I'm not so worried about that. And I also have a child who is in special ed, and she's managing through. But I would just be crushed if the seniors were not able to step on campus at all in 2020, 2021.
Tricia, you want me to handle that one?
Sure.
Yeah, so hi, everybody. John Lyons, principal of high school. There's nothing that we worry more about at the high school right now. It's one of the things we worry about is in general, the cultural experience that comes with being in high school, particularly a high school senior. You know, we've tried to manipulate our schedules athletically to make sure that we have, that's kind of the driving force with most of our culture on campus. And with that will hopefully come things like, you know, some sort of modified homecoming experience or some sort of thing. The upside is, I think we learned a lot in the spring about some things we can do creatively if, like you said, God forbid we're still in this kind of experience, whether it's the similar graduation experience we had at the track, which a lot of people walked away with feeling really positively about. But we're also trying to find ways to ingrain the culture, starting with this Friday with doing minute parties where kids can drive to campus to pick up a treat and do those kinds of things so that they do get a little bit of traction. We're hoping that things are getting better on our front. Obviously, waivers and things like that don't apply to the high school right now, but we're putting all of our eggs in the basket of if we can keep going the direction we're going and really with our high school kids, getting them to follow the rules, getting them to follow the mask rules when they're out and about and encouraging our students to follow those guidelines. That's going to lead to us getting a better result for second semester. We haven't abandoned all those things. We're just pushing as much of it back to second semester as we can and trying to get creative about that because nothing makes this harder than not being able to stand on the sideline on a Friday night or a Saturday afternoon and watch a football game or standing on the court of basketball. Those are the things that we miss. We get to school and kids are getting a good education, and our teachers are rocking it, but we haven't had that cultural experience, and we haven't been able to find those outlets for kids to release that steam at the high school level. And that's going to be a big part now that we've kind of settled into our academics, focusing in on how do we bring culture in this environment with also prepping for the senior experience so they get those moments. We want to give them those moments. We just have to make sure we do it in a safe fashion. So it's definitely at the paramount of our thinking.
Okay, it looks like, thank you, John. It looks like we have about 4 minutes left, so maybe one more.
Okay, so Sarah Nagai, I don't know, I'm sorry if I mutilated the name. Anyway, you can unmute yourself and ask your question.
Okay, hi. Yeah, I am just wondering, I kind of got on here late, so I didn't get to hear the whole thing, but my concern is masks. Will kids in elementary school, that's my main concern, have to wear the masks all day, being indoor and outdoor? And if they are, will you provide the science that shows that it's beneficial for them? Or if it's just a show, basically?
Someone on my team want to take that?
One thing I'd like to share, Jay Martin again at River School, is that currently, because we have 2 cohorts on campus, I'm pleasantly surprised that I feel they're adjusting pretty well to the mask mandate. We know right now, or maybe I need to qualify that in grades K through 2, that it's strongly recommended that they wear masks, and in grades 3 and up, it's required that they wear masks. So when they're in our multi-purpose room and when they're outside playing, regardless of the science, that is the mandate from public health that we need to follow. There certainly is a good body of research that shows that masks are effective in preventing or minimizing or mitigating some of the concern about spreading. Regardless, the public health mandate is that if you're in grades 3 and above, they have to be in masks.
I can just echo that, and that also is CDC are who we are listening to on those recommendations that any child over 2 years of age on campus, it's highly recommended that they wear masks, and it is something that research supports being beneficial to anybody over 2 years of age.
That was Debbie Taylor, our district nurse. She's been going to all the meetings with the county Department of Health and keeping us on the straight and narrow, right, Debbie?
Doing the best we can.
Okay, it looks like we have 1 minute left. I'm going to open it up to any of our administrators. Does anyone have anything they want to end the call with or say? I would just say that we will be talking obviously more about these options at our September 30th board meeting. And we will be having another town hall meeting in October. So look for that date. And we're all of us in this administrative group here are willing to receive emails and phone calls and answer your questions. Know that we are here working on behalf of you and your children. That's why we are here. And we are all in this together. We're stronger if we can stay on the same page as much as possible and remember that it's about the kids. And we're here to support you however we can. So be safe, be well. We'll talk to you soon.